What is up, YouTube? It is Aaron here, and we are starting a Yu-Gi-Oh podcast. I've got two friends of mine here that I'm going to introduce shortly. I just wanted to give you a quick breakdown of what we're doing. We're just doing a lot of discussions. We're going to do some YCS event prep. We're going to discuss the meta. We're going to do some regional breakdown stuff. We're going to still learning out trying to figure out the structure of everything. So it may take a little bit of time for us to get organized, but right now, I really enjoy talking with these two guys about Yu-Gi-Oh! So we figured to post on YouTube and see what happens. So guys, introduce yourselves.
Yeah, my name is Logan Johnson. Have a YouTube channel. It's just Logan Johnson YGO. I've had Aaron on my channel once already, and I've been on his channel once already. So if you guys have not checked that out, go ahead and check that out.
Hi everyone, my name is Rehan. I do not have a YouTube channel. I also don't have YouTube or Yu-Gi-Oh dedicated socials, but I'm around. Aaron can probably link my actual Twitter handle, so I'm more than happy to take messages or questions as they come about. I've been playing for a while now, like 2018, I believe. So 2018 to now, so like 7 years. I've topped a couple of premier events, gotten second place at a YCS. I guess finished a remote invitational as a champion. So I've been around and I've known Aaron for just as long. And here I am.
Yeah,
So we got two members of the second place club in here.
Yeah, yeah, Logan, you got second at a YCS. You back-to-back points qualifier playoffs. Anything else notable?
Yeah, I topped top 8 Nats, top 64 YCS, top 32 YCS, top 8 of YCS, and a bunch of regionals. So
yeah, as you do. Alrighty, so first things first. First things first, or I guess we'll go over me real quick. Aaron.mcinnes, obviously my YouTube channel. We'll probably post on Logan as well at some point just to up the exposure. But yeah, so Aaron been playing since 2015, 16 roughly. 21 regional tops, 7 premier tops. Nothing super interesting in terms of deep runs, but looking to change that at some point in the near future. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, I just enjoy talking Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm really enjoying the YouTube content lately, so gonna keep it going and enjoy the podcast and chatting with these boys about what's coming up. And yeah, so we're gonna hop right into it we're gonna do some breakdowns of regionals. This is obviously gonna be pretty audio focused, but we're gonna have some visuals up as well if you're on YouTube and able to view it. So we are using Ivan Campos's spreadsheet breakdown for a lot of this information, and then also YGO Prodex Twitter, where all of them been fantastic resources for us to make all of this super accessible. And yeah, so I'm gonna quickly acknowledge some of the cool decks that we see on this list that topped. I don't think these decks are super competitively viable, but they're kind of neat to see have some sort of success. So there's a Jurak deck that went X2 and topped the DFW regional. Orcus Mitsu obviously is still performing a little bit. We've got Earth Machine RB, which we're not going to review, but it's nice to see that deck finally have some results. We've got Cyrax, who topped with Blue Eyes in Denver, so congratulations to him. I think the deck profile will be up on his channel at some point in the next day or two. And then, yeah, so from there as well, we're going to also acknowledge some of the people we expect to do well at in the Worlds, on the points grind, etc. Currently, we have most of people, all of the top 6 of Nationals outside of Willie were top this weekend. Isaiah's topped with Crystron K9. Aditya topped DFW with Vanquishal K9. Julian Kahan topped with Shaddoll Dracotail out in, I believe, Cali, somewhere on the West Coast. Charlie Futch topped, I think, Indy, somewhere in that area with Vanquishal K9. Mario D'Amico topped with Yummy, the hand trap build. His video's on Triff channel. And then Jose Santiago, Crystal Blanc, 2 very good duelists in the Northeast, topped somewhere in New York, I believe, Queens, with Vanquishal K9. Their lists currently aren't out, so if those get posted, we will update you in the future. And then, yeah, so we've got as well some notable lists that we think we're going to discuss currently that I think have some potential, currently a little bit underexplored. So yeah, we're going to start off with Mimighoul / Fiendsmith Yummy. So either one of you, which one have you looked at? In terms of Yummy variants, what have you seen? What do you think of either of these are interesting / fix any of the problems that you currently have with the deck?
Yeah, of those two decks, I haven't really looked at the Mimighoul Yummy deck too much. I kind of just assumed it was more of a meme deck. So I'd be more interested to talk about the deck we have on the screen right now. The Fiendsmith Yummy deck running 3 copies of Sangan, bunch of board breakers, has spell card Monster Reborn, which is kind of interesting. Yeah, have either of you guys actually played this deck or played against it yet?
I've played a bit on ladder and I thought it was really cool with the deck just converting its bodies into Feedsmith cards. I think right now a lot of people are just not prepared for a card like Wave King Caesar, and I think Wave King Caesar into the new deck just applies so much pressure in like the last format, and I think that card is like, if you are able to make it somehow, I think it gives you a lot of value for your end board.
For sure. One thing that I'm kind of interested about is I assumed one of the benefits of this deck would be you can still play Purge because obviously all light monsters. So I guess because they're taking a breaker approach, it's not something they were super concerned with. But outside of Caesar and obviously Sandgain, which I'm not certain how necessary this is for the deck. I'm kind of curious like what thoughts y'all have on this. But I assumed one of the benefits of this deck would be that you get to play Purge as well, which is not something that they're choosing to include. So what do y'all think?
Yeah, in this deck specifically, the Purge would conflict with the Sangan. However, I do think Sangan is like a fairly premium starter. It's better than like a Lollipop or a Cookie because if you already have an extender with it, it can search like an Ash Blossom. And if you don't, then it is just a one card starter. And in the traditional Yummy deck, I don't think you would want to play this card because it plays into Zuna. Also conflicts with Purge, but since you're already playing the Fiendsmith cards, I think it's like a pretty reasonable inclusion. I don't know if it's a 3 of because you're kind of like getting to a point where you have a lot of normal summons. But yeah, how do you guys feel about Sangan specifically?
I'm
I
also
think Sangan.
sorry,
Sorry, go ahead.
No.
So my issue with Sangan is, on first glance, something that the OCG sort of discuss is Cup C is arguably the best normal summon, going first and second, just because it gets you a resource right away that allows you to extend. And my issue with Sangan is that it just seems really poor positioned in going second. Perhaps like the breaker approach mitigates that, but I think that's something that stood out to me. Is if my opponent normal summons Sangan, like if I'm playing Dracotail, I'm just bouncing that away right away. And so you don't get the value of it being a name in hand that you can synergize with like Yummy Surprise. And then you just don't actually get good value out of it. Because even in the future, like if you're able to stick a body on board, that's not an extender, that's just a dead card in hand.
Yeah, I think I feel similarly. When I saw Sangan and also cards like Obedient Schooled and then like Fiendsmith Sanct and all that, I feel like there's a little bit of conflict between all the starters. He's playing 43, so like maybe a little bit less than you would expect, but it seems like, especially when you're also playing 9 Yummy names, which I feel like I would cut down, especially if I'm playing Sangan. I think there's like a little bit more clunk in this list than I would like the things we've discussed in the past. Like a lot of the big one of the big advantages of the Yummy deck is you just play so much on Engine. So if I'm gonna cut down on those numbers, I want to have like a really good reason to do so. I think Fiendsmith could be a justification if you think you're going first, endboard isn't good enough, or it's an additional push going second. But I think with all of the cards, like even with like Spellcar Monster Reborn, like how effective are all of these cards together? And I think there's good ideas. I think it's not refined enough for it to be this is not like the list that I would take to an event if I thought the deck was good.
Yeah, I think one other like big deck building issue I see with this is like your only hand trap is Ash Blossom, and you have to play this card because you can search it off as Sangan, and also with the inclusion of Fiendsmith cards, you have to have it for the for Fua. But I feel like the Breaker Yummy deck in general, the big advantage is that it could play songs and it could play Purge, and this deck doesn't have that either. So it does. To me, I don't really see the big benefit of playing this type of version compared to any of the other variants.
And this version is interesting, right? Because I think when we talked about in one of our earlier videos, the positives for Yummy in this current format, it's the fact that it just turns Izuna into a dead card in a lot of the K9 decks. And now suddenly you're playing a deck that is normally resilient to the K9 cards, but now you're giving them value where you really shouldn't be. So I think just added on to what Logan said is like you're not playing some of the niche cards that this deck is known to be able to play and take advantage of, but now you're also giving value to some really popular cards in the format.
Yeah. I think probably last thing on this list is I think also the siding gets a little weird. Like when you're not maining chummies, you kind of just like your deck already has to be like really strong going second because the argument for siding chummies is like, okay, I just need to draw more of the cards that are already in my main deck. And in this list, like obviously you have like some good going second, but also whenever you're playing a breaker deck, you have chummies for more going second, assuming you're not playing cards like songs. So like the going second is strong, but now we have to like figure out all of our going first siding patterns because we always have to take out Dark Lure and this Duster card, and then cards like Drop It and Imperm are like playable going first, but like let's say you're playing a breaker mirror match and now this thrust card's like not very good as well. So I think it can just be like really difficult to effectively side when you're playing a breaker deck. That's one of the biggest problems I have with it. That's why I like hand traps so much, and especially in a deck like this where you can just like go in first and going second. You have interrupts that are also back up your board. So yeah, Mimighoul Yummy, it topped the DFW regional. It's actually gathered some mono testing groups, so shout out to Brayden, good for him. Him and a couple other guys were trying the deck out. Hopefully the list gets posted in the near future so I can take a look at it and get some feedback. I haven't actually played against it yet, so seems interesting. I know I have a lot of friends that really enjoy the Mimighoul archetype. It's interesting from a TCG perspective. It hasn't ever performed super well because Impulse came out very shortly after and kind of shut that archetype down. So a bit inconvenient for them, but it seems to be nice to have the potential. So next we have Dracotail Dragonmaid. I think I have that list. Yes. So this was top 4 of, I think, Indianapolis. Yeah. And then I also had a friend that went X2 at the DFW regional with it. His only loss, other than, I don't remember, I think 7 or 8, was his round 1 showed up late. So effectively X1 in terms of gameplay. So that's 2 separate events where this deck has shown some potential. I've done Dracotail videos and I have a couple different people swear by this list. I haven't put in the time to figure it out yet. So have either of you looked into it or played against it or have any thoughts?
I have played against this deck. I have not played it myself. The games that I played against it, the Dragonmaid cards seemed fairly strong when they resolved. I know it puts up an Omni Negate. The synergy is a little bit weird with the Dragontail cards. I'm not sure how much synergy there is there. Somebody would have to explain that to me. I've only really seen the Dragonmaid cards work by themselves, and it is like a bigger package. It looks like, what is that, 8 cards or something. So it also is going to bring like deck building constraints that I'm not really a fan of. But yeah, what do you guys think about the synergies with this?
Yeah, I think I'm echoing what Logan said. I've also only played against it. I haven't played it because I thought like you're adding cards that are a bit more situational and could increase clunk in a deck that is otherwise really smooth. But when the cards did resolve, I think those Dragonmaid cards applied a lot of pressure, especially the fusions in the extra deck. I think they got a new one in Battles of Legend, Dragonmaid
Yeah, this one
something.
down here, Lamp, I think, or Lair.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think when the cards do go off, they're really good. But I think if that's the clause of if my cards work, they're good. I just think that, for example, one of the other lists that we'll be talking about in a bit, the Shaddoll engine, is arguably just better overall for what it does. But it's a really cool deck, and I think a lot of people are just not expecting it. I think the green one, the green Dragon Maid, can be used as a breaker if I'm not mistaken. I think it negates something.
Yeah, and that card can actually deal with like purely Nor. I'm not sure how that card. I'd have to read that card again. I'm not sure if it deals with Liger at all. But that card has like a very weird effect to like your opponent like can't activate cards with that name or something.
Yeah, that's exactly. So it affects the player and not the card. So it can
Yeah, it
obviously.
affects the player.
Yeah, so I have effectively no experience with this deck. This is unfortunately the only variant I haven't looked into. I just, again, so like it doesn't, it just feels kind of like the Primite build, just visually. Like I'm just like adding some more normal summons and like some what looks like clunk for a stronger end board. And I don't know if that is the problem I have with the Dragon Tail deck. Is did I have enough normal summons or do I need another gate on my end board? For me, it's like did I stop my vanquishable opponent from full boarding me going second or yeah, I think that's just like the primary one. And like against the Mitsurugi deck, like how obviously putting up an Omni is good, so like those variants probably perform better into something like that. But how is the Maliss matchup still? Like because we're playing less on engine, like those are concerns that I have when I look at this and I see 5 chummies and then 5 hand traps otherwise. So I think yeah,
Another
sorry.
thing with this deck is I think these Dragon Maid cards play into like Fua more than you ever normally would,
Mm-hmm.
as well as like some 1-for-1 hand traps that like when you activate a fusion spell and go Altharion, you like pretty much play around everything in the game. So I'm not really sure if adding an engine that makes your opponent's normally dead cards have some sort of value is really worth it.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is something I will take a look at, hopefully with some either online replays or get the chance to play against in person. But currently, not something that I'm super interested in. I'll ask the guy that I know that top with it what his thoughts are on the deck. But when after seeing it and just taking a look at it visually, I'm just not super impressed by what I see personally. So from there we have we'll go over Memento a little bit. It won the Seattle regional that Logan got second at, and Hengo Chow topped Mtrl with it. I don't think I have the list available to us. So what do y'all think about Memento in the current format with the new K9 stuff and obviously Paradise Smasher, which was playable at Nationals?
Yeah,
I think
the oh sorry, go for
sorry,
it.
no, go ahead.
Yeah, the list that won the Seattle Regionals is actually a friend of mine. He's been playing the deck since literally the cards came out. He's very, very, very good with the deck. His list is out online. I think it got posted yesterday. He was playing Azuna and Lupus, and he was also playing one Jokul. You do have a couple of level 5s in the deck. You have, I believe, the Horse is a level 5, and I believe Acheron is a level 5.
Yes.
So there's some synergy there. But for the most part, it is just a Memento deck that plays Azuna. And I think that is going to be a deck that has a ceiling in terms of how far it can go in a larger like YCS event. But at a regional level, if you're very good with the deck and have good technical play, I think it can pretty much take you as far as you can get with at a regional. It can easily go undefeated at any regional at that level.
Yeah, I think the deck relies more so on the Memento engine rather than the K9 engine. Like any sort of level 5 centric deck, it definitely benefits from the addition of the K9 cards. But like Logan said, I think a lot of it is just based on the Memento package rather than the K9 package in terms of what it can or cannot do. Because it always had access to low rank 5s. Like at Nationals, I hit my opponent with double Fua, and my opponent hit me back with a Durandal Droll. So it's been able to do some silly rank 5 shenanigans before, and I think it'll stay around for that.
Dang it. Where I all right, give me 1 second while I find this. So the next list that we have is the Maliss deck, I think. Okay, that's the one that I had pulled up that I don't. So we can talk about Isaiah's K9 Crystron deck real quick. This is the gentleman who got 3rd place with Gem Knight at Nationals, and he's playing a full breaker Crystron list with Eclipse, Droplet, Dark Ruler, Super Poly, Tactics, no Thrust in the main deck. We'll check if it's on the side. Normal, I would assume like a pretty standard 2-Soul Fafnir. There's no Thivestron. I forget the cards. The little blue one that searches a monster in it. Flagger, 1 Trist, 3 Jokul, 1 Lantern, 1 Azuna currently, which isn't something we'll definitely discuss. So 1 Lantern, 1 Azuna, and then 2 Case of K9, 2 Chaotic Elements, along with the Quick Play spell in the main deck. And there for Super Poly targets, we have Garura, Mysterion for Dracotail, and then Mud Dragon. And the side deck is another Azuna, a lot of hand traps, including Contact Seed, the 1 Clockwork Knight, which is searchable, and then Harpie's Feather Duster. So yeah, what do y'all feel after seeing this interesting list with the limited or the less Azunas and like the full K9 package otherwise?
So I saw this list and it really stood out to me because this list screams I got bullied by Yummy in testing. So, because like you see the 1 Izuna and I think that really stands out. But this list is cool because um you basically just don't turn on your opponent's K9 cards other than the Fua on the opponent's turn. So I thought it's neat from that perspective. And I've seen a lot of lists now cutting the Thisfern, the purple one, for the Crystron engine. Just simplifying the lines a bit more. I know there's definitely value when you do play the Thisfern, but it's just adding into some of the clunk that the Crystron deck plays, and I think if you're able to smooth out the deck a bit more, it could benefit from that. I think in the extra deck, I'm interested to hear perhaps like if there's some explanation of to like why it's Mysterion and not Secretarion for the Super Poly slot, because I you would think that for Dracotail, it should be Secretarion rather than Mysterion.
So real quick, I think the Secretarion is like it theoretically is very good because you think like turning off the fusions is good, but most of the value from that deck is like the graveyard effects on your opponent's turn, like being able to pan him a Lulu just like as your interrupts. So like like I said, in theory it sounds cool, like oh I turn off the Arfalion, but like Gulomo isn't a real interrupt in most of the situations. So like you stop Arthalion, which is usually 1 maybe 2 bounces, which obviously can be impactful, but you obviously have cards like Droplet that you're fine with. And I assume it's because you missed your like the cards that they're sending to grave are gonna get the value either way. So you'd rather just like remove the body and like be able to apply pressure with it still. And that is my guess as to why he did that.
Can you scroll up a little bit on the list?
Yep,
I just want to
sure.
see his ratio. Yeah, he's playing. Okay, 1 Smiger, no Thicefern. I think that shows that like this is a list that he actually play tested a lot because I think if you practice with this deck, you don't actually need the Thicefern. It comes up in like some very weird circumstances. Sometimes when you get Fluid or sometimes when you draw too many Crystron cards, I've noticed. But I do think that is like a very easy cut from the deck to fit another non-engine. 2 Case of K9 over the 3rd Chaotic Elements. I'm not really sure on the reasoning on that. Do you guys have any thoughts there?
Assume just because I don't know. Yeah, because Joko's just like the better starter. Ace is searchable. Elements isn't like the most relevant board breaker, so I don't know. I guess he just wanted to reduce redundancy and then just like post side do go down to 1 case if I had to guess.
That's fair.
So Rehan, any last thoughts on the deck? I know you played it a fair bit. I see K9 Hound in the extra deck just to give Forest Release a little bit more value. Maybe go into Zeus. The rank 5 in terms of the extra deck are kind of limited. There's Valon, River Stormer, Hounds, Ripper, and then obviously Nova. So there's no Chronomaly. I don't remember the level 5 light guy.
It's
There's no
called
other.
Vimana.
Yeah, Vimana. There's no National package. So I guess it makes sense as to why he did this because he wanted to try a card like Super Poly, so Azuna is going to have less utility. But it seems like the extra deck's like pretty limited because that was an issue that I had with when I was testing the deck. Is obviously new to the deck, probably making mistakes, but it felt like sometimes the extra deck was like a little limited in terms of what I wanted out of it, like being locked into machines either too early or just like not having enough good rank 5s.
Yeah, I think this deck really reminds me of like some of the earlier era combo decks like 2016, 2017, where you would vomit your entire deck onto your board and just say, "This is my board. If you can break it, you win the game."
Mm.
This deck obviously isn't completely like that because you do have some recyclability in the deck, mostly through the Crystron engine, but a lot of it is front row heavy, where you do rely a lot on what the bodies you put on in turn 1. And I feel like if you do break through that board or you're able to piece it apart, the Crystron deck doesn't have a great answer for turn 3. So I think that's definitely a limitation of this deck.
This might also be a good time to talk about the Megafleet card.
Yes, so we're actually getting into tech. So really quickly, I was going to bring up there was a Maliss deck that topped with Ghost Reaper on this side and Iblee, which actually does lead us into techs that we have seen and we're kind of looking forward to YCS Vancouver. So yeah, first of all, we've got Chimeratech Megafleet, which we've seen in a couple different lists. I think one of the Julian Kahan and the guy that he tested with, I don't remember the gentleman's name, Daniel maybe. I may find it.
Jesse.
Jesse,
Jesse. Yeah.
Yeah, it's on here somewhere. Yeah, Jesse, you're right. And that he cited, or I think he mained it as just like an out to the Crystron deck. I assume that is like a pretty rough matchup for his build, and that is why he did it. So what do you think about that card? It obviously requires an extra spot. It's a kind of a not niche, but like not as popular a matchup as a deck like Vanquishful. So what do you think about the viability of it? Is it worth it? How effective is it?
It's weird because I think it's one of those cards that the minute it becomes popular, everyone plays around it. So for me, it seems a lot like the card like Contact C. It's almost just a homework check. Like, did your opponent, learn about this card, understand like the way to play around it? And so it's the same way as like playing Contact C for Yummy and just checking, okay, whether or not they have Cross Sheep in their extra deck after a beating school or things like that. I think when playing the deck, I don't think there was ever a time where I needed to ever play into Chimeratech, the Chimeratech fusion. Just because if you're aware of the card, you're just always able to suck up whatever it is in the extra monster zone with Infinity. Obviously, your opponent can put something in the extra monster zone and then go into Infinity, but I think it loses a lot of value that way. I think the best value you'll get out of that card is when you turn 2 of your opponent's monsters into a Chimeratech. Those are my thoughts on it, Logan.
Yeah, I think the only time that the Crystron deck like really is incentivized to play into this card is when you open Jokul plus like a non Sulfador level 5. You get to a point where you have like a River Stormer on your board and a Scrap Recycler, and a lot of times you want to like turn that into an SP in the EMZ. Um, Aside from that, I think the deck can like almost always play around it, and I do think in the Dracotail deck it's kind of cool because I think the Megafleet card, correct me if I'm wrong, but it can just use your own EMZ card. So I think you can just like make your first fusion summon in the EMZ and then like get rid of it. I don't know how good that is, but if there's any deck that's going to like instantly put something in the EMZ, it's probably the Dracotail deck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so that was the deck that obviously was citing it. So it makes I think the most sense in that list. The extra deck is like a little bit flexible. It's like they were playing the K9 cards if I remember correctly, but if you're not playing them, I think you only have really like 10-ish cards that are pretty required. And then from there you've got probably 5 slots you can try with Super Poly, you can do Chimeratech. Obviously you're playing an auxiliary fusion engine like they were doing Shaddolls and King of the Swamp, which is something we can maybe briefly touch on. So yeah, you have space in that deck to do it. And it seems cool, but I can't really imagine that deck is prominent enough for it to be justified? And then even if it is prominent enough, is the card going to be live often enough in that matchup for it to be summoned? Maybe if it was like a going first and going second tech, like you could justify it, but I think as only going second and only into this, we'll say like 8% of the field matchup, like is it really justified? And my current guess would be no.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yep, I also agree with that.
So yeah, we can go over the Julian list real quick. I don't have a picture of it, unfortunately, so I'm just going to bring up the stuff because we've talked about the Dracotail deck a fair bit in the past. It is, so Shaddoll cards, I think it's a 5-card package, including main deck Shaddoll Dragon. There is King of the Swamp in it, along with Poly, and the primary extra deck targets were Red Eyes Dragoon, Guardian Chimera, and one El Shaddoll Winda, and then they played a couple K9 stuff. They played Azuna, they had a Valon and a Ripper, and then like we said, the Chimeratech, and then yeah, it's like one Secretarion, one Mysterion, and then just like the normal, I think 4 or 5 card package. So what are your thoughts on this? It kind of combining the two strategies that we did, Logan, where you did a King of the Swamp and I did Shaddolls. So what are your thoughts on this as someone that has played the King of the Swamp version?
So, one thing I've been noticing in this deck as well as other decks is people playing the Azuna package and they're only rank 5 being Ripper and Valon. From my experience, the real like benefit of that of having that engine is having the ability to go Nash Knight. I also find that against the older decks like Maliss and Mitsu, if you don't have the Nash Knight, it's actually like Azuna is actually just not a very good interruption. When they start Dormouse, like you kind of have to have the Nash Knight. Like Valon's not doing anything in that situation. Ripper's not doing anything in that situation. And then against Mitsu, like the difference between like Bookamooning their Habakiri and like actually taking their Habakiri is like very, very significant. Um, so with that, I'm not sure how I feel about it. I understand that there's extra deck constraints. I do think you could just play a 2-card Nash Knight package and be fine. In terms of the Shadolls, I those cards are really weird. I do think those cards are like fantastic when you draw them, fantastic when you resolve them. However, I still don't know if the Dracotail engine is good enough going first, even with those, to justify cutting 5 or 6 non-engine slots from the deck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and their non-engine slots, if I remember correctly, was 2 Nibiru, the 4 Azuna, or the 4 K9 cards, and I believe 5 Chummies. So it was like 11
Yeah, it was five or 6 chummies, no Ash.
Yeah, so they were pretty content just with trying to draw like the very good ones. Like Nib when it resolves is fantastic. So I assume that I think in the video they discussed there's like a hierarchy. Like if I have K9 plus Nib, my goal is to K9 so I can resolve Nib, and then like 5 mana as well also fits into that equation. So that the deck has like a fair amount of non-engine, and like this is like kind of like the goal from last format, just kind of transferred into the current format where before it was Chummies plus Droll and whatever if you could fit Nib in your deck and it was good in the matchup, sure. But yeah, just like the premise of, hey, I want to resolve my good hand traps, and when I do resolve them, they're going to get me into like the broken cards on my deck. And yeah, it's a different approach to the deck for sure, because something that you did where you played like a lot of non-engineers try to suffocate them. They're they're a little more comfortable with like maybe trying to break boards, it seems like, because they can't stop them by they're not playing cards like Valor and Ash and whatever. So they're just like, okay, make this board. Is the deck good enough to break through it? And from my experience, I haven't been able to say that it has, but obviously they had success with it. I assume Guardian Chimera helps with that as well. So, Rehan, you're a fusion enthusiast. How do you feel?
I think the theory behind their deck was good. Perhaps I do like my non-engine in the deck, but I think their theory was pretty good in the sense that there definitely is a hierarchy, and I think they also realized that Nib is one of the standout cards in the current format, especially against the new decks. So if you are able to pair cards like Nib, 5 mana, Izuna, and one of like any 2 of those 3 cards paired together, I think definitely applies a lot of pressure. I think they were also going for seals, if I'm not mistaken. And so
Yep.
going first, I think their strategy was being able to go seals, empty their board, and then go ahead and chain their Fua or their Perulia. And I think those type of plays are also respectable in game 1 scenarios. Something that was interesting though was that they're actually mating Shaddoll Dragon. And I was initially citing it because I was playing Shaddoll Fusion inside. And I thought Shaddoll Dragon in the main was really weak. But I think as the format developed, and especially into the newer decks, Shaddoll Dragon in the main, I think, turns Squamata into a really valuable card and a really flexible card. Because you can snipe the Dragon Tail sets, you can go after the field spells for Yummy, and then you can hit the Vanquish Soul field spell as well. So I think it really is actually flexible in the main. And I didn't give it the respect that perhaps it deserved. And because I was initially just citing it. But I thought that was really cool. And another thing that was also cool for their list when we're talking about neat like metagame techs is I believe Jesse was playing Ultimate Slayer in his side, and he was siding Garura and the
Malong.
Synchro Melong.
Malong.
Yeah.
Yes. I thought that was pretty cool because you're able to go ahead and hit the Herald and then send Malong, and Malong just forces something else. So, and I think that just makes your Yummy matchup easier. And I think it was the same for the Dracotail matchup because you just send Garura and you're able to bounce something while still getting the value of the bounce, but also the Garura draw as well. So I think that was pretty cool. And I think Jesse said that he was also sort of respecting the previous format deck, so specifically Detonator. And so having Slayer for Detonator was interesting for him. I don't think this deck struggles into Detonator, so I don't know how valuable that slot is. But it was interesting to see Ultimate Slayer pop up because I haven't seen it ever since we've transitioned to Jihu format.
Mm-hmm. So that, and then obviously you have Val on the extra deck, which is a benefit of the K9 card. So maybe they were like, I want to remove like Detonator plus Prayers, and that honestly may on its own just be good enough in the Mitsuraito deck. So yeah, we've talked about Super Poly, and now you brought up Slayer. There's a couple other decks or techs that I've seen versus the Yami matchup. The first one we'll discuss the Metaltronus. This was I've seen a little bit over the weekend. I think some Yami decks were siding for the mirror match, and then the Vanquishful deck that won Montreal, a kid named Luca, who I've been hyping up on Twitter, and literally anyone that'll listen to me about this guy, I think he's fantastic and will have a lot of success. So he played a Vanquishful list that had a Small World in the main as its consistency piece. He played two of those, one Borger, and I think three Jokul, three Zuna, no Lantern. He sided Lantern and Force Release, no case of Canine or anything. And then yeah, normal non-engine. He played Ash and Crow, no Bestials. There's no Nib anywhere in his list, which I thought was pretty interesting based on how high me and Rehan are on that card specifically. And yeah, in the side deck he had Metaltronus. We talked about this on Logan's channel if you want to go get some more thoughts on that. But yeah, then he also had Metaltronus in the side deck with Ojama Knight, which is I think coverage for Yummy, and then I assume you can also hit Spheres with it because of Light 0. And then also you can hit Artholion because of Caesar being a 3000 dragon. Also on Earth as well, so just all of the attributes covered. So what are your thoughts on Metaltronus, boys?
Yeah, I like Metaltronus, but I don't really like it in the K9 Vanquish deck. And this is something we talked about on my channel quite a bit. Any time that you're playing a card in the Vanquish deck that's not an attribute and not a monster, that card has to like be borderline game winning, and I don't think that's what that card does in that deck right now. I think it's a good 1-for-1 trade, sometimes a +1. But I do think in the Yummy deck, that card's like very, very good in the mirror. Maybe one of the best cards in the mirror. It's fantastic going second. Going first, it's essentially a Solemn Strike. My biggest problem is right now there's too many decks in the format that you can't really dedicate one card for one matchup. So I think it'll probably be something that gains a lot of popularity once a ban list comes out.
Yeah, exactly. You stole my thoughts exactly. I think it definitely is cool, and it's really cool in the Yummy Mirror match, like everyone has just said. But it's just the format is so wide. So just I think people are trying techs, and they're trying to see if they can get like a tech edge for Vancouver. But I just think like if you're playing a regional, it's just so wide. And if I'm playing a regional, I would just want as much coverage as possible in my side deck. And I just don't think Metaltronus is that card right now.
I think it makes sense. Yeah, and the decks are such a diverse format that especially if you're playing like let's say a Ryzo deck, like you have whatever light, fire, dark, like theoretically you would have options for it, but like everything else is just like such a very different archetype from each other. I think Vanquish is like probably impressively like one of the most versatile because of like how many different attributes, types, and attack levels. But it just isn't a deck that I feel takes advantage of that card being in your list. So I get like all you have made fantastic points. I think the card's good. It's been good as pretty much since its release, but probably not the format
One
for
thing.
it. Sorry, you're good.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say one thing. Before we move on, I really want to talk about in this list is: do you guys have any idea what he's doing with Jokul without Lantern and without X Force? I have no idea what this card is doing in his main deck without any of the additional pieces.
I don't remember
So
specifically his extra deck. I think it was normal stuff, Nash Knight, etc. So yeah, Rehan.
I've seen people play one Jokul as like a searchable dark attribute.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're able to resolve like the K9 engine or just go into Izuna, you're able to search a Jokul, which offers you a dark. So you're able to turn like an earth and a fire into a dark, which is cool that you're able to like on demand add a specific attribute between earth and dark. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to play 1. I just
Mhm.
really don't understand the reasoning behind 3. Like
Yeah,
that by itself, it just doesn't. You get what, a rank 5? That's it.
yeah, and like if especially if you're playing against like the Yummy deck going first, like Ripper isn't too valuable. You already have access to a rank 5, so like so Joko can search Izuna. Like Ripper isn't going to provide additional value because you're not playing Lantern. So I kind of agreed that I think the rank 5 pool overall is pretty weak, which is why I've been kind of moved away from it in the K9 deck, like or the Vanquishal deck, like we've discussed over the past few weeks. So not my preference. I think the 3-1 and then 1 Joko because you need a dark sometimes is I think a viable strategy. The additional, especially when you're not playing the Lantern, I think it doesn't really make too much sense to me. I'm open to being shown wrong, why I'm wrong, but currently, like, just my perspective, it doesn't seem like the most, I don't know the right word, just like, I don't think it makes the most sense, like, from a deck building perspective. And yeah, so, I'm sorry, yeah, you're good.
Oh, I was gonna say while we're on the topic,
Hmm.
have you guys tested the full K9 package with Saryuja yet to try to bridge into the Vanquish cards?
Not yet. I got told about that, and when I was doing a little bit of coaching, I like kind of displayed all of the lists. I was like, so these are how I would play all of the decks, like whatever extra. There's like the normal kind of props list, like you can play small world in, and then like the standard K9 deck. Like I think if I was playing the standard K9 deck, Saryuja is kind of like a mandatory include because, like you said, like you can't bridge from K9 into Vanquish, which is I think the primary reason why you would play a big K9 package is because it works with your main deck. And pure K9, at least in the current format, I don't think is a good enough deck to be played. Maybe post a ban list when there's no Murakumo and Maliss. You can try and play like a pure K9 deck, maybe a Fiendsmith K9 deck, and like just try and take advantage of all the value you get. But in the current list, like if you are not using K9 to either break boards through Azuna or bridge into your other engine in the forms of like River Stormer and Crystron, then what is like the big benefit of it? So I think having that Saryuja extra deck is like kind of required because the Vanquish will, from my perspective, is just like a way stronger engine. Like we saw it use very well at both the WCQs prior to K9 coming out. So that would be the aspect of the deck that I'm prioritizing.
Listen, he's saying that now, but when he was initially told about Saryuja, he called the messenger crazy.
He was. I mean, if you had met him, you would also call him crazy. Just so we're all aware,
The messenger was not me.
it was not you. No.
Just
Yeah, no. Rehan, he's got some ideas, but most of them are pretty good. So any additional thoughts on Saryuja, Rehan, or?
no, I also thought it was insane until I realized what it was actually supposed to do.
All right, so at least it's not just me.
Yeah, and I know next I don't really want to talk too much about the next set, but there is a new K9 in the next set that Vanquish will be playing, and it makes Saryuja much easier to get into.
Mhm.
It's like a tour guide for K9, so that'll be something to look at in a couple of months.
Yeah, after Vancouver, we'll probably do some kind of overview of the next set. So last tech that I saw for Yummy over the weekend was Ghost Reaper Winter Cherries. So there was a Malice deck that had two different interesting techs. We're going to talk about the other one shortly after this. So yeah, Cherries, his list played Snatchy and Ripper in the main deck, and then I believe he sided Artholion if Logan remembers the list and told me correctly.
Yep,
So Cherries,
100%.
what are your thoughts on this card, Logan?
Bad. I think this card has been bad for what is it, 6-7 years now, 8 years, something like that. It's inherently a neg one. The extra deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not as open as it used to be. So if you're really going to dedicate a card in your extra deck for something like this, it's a very big commitment. And realistically, you're probably gonna have to dedicate 2 or even 3 cards for it. And I think most decks just have like a workaround for this. It's been a very long time since we've seen a deck like really rely so heavily on one card that this card is going to be good enough. Even with Yummy, if they're playing Almirage, if they're playing Anima, they can work around this. And yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I don't think this card is very strong right now.
Yeah, I think it's basically what Logan said. I have a playset of ulti cherries in my binder that I just took out the other
Same.
day. And then I tried to test it on DV and I put the cherries right back in the binder.
Yeah,
So I thought about it being relevant potentially for Vanquish Soul and Dragontail because it's a monster-based non-engine that's dark, so dark valuable for VS, and then it being monster and loopable is potentially valuable for Dragontail. But I think like the only decks where you would use this would be Dragontail and Yummy. And then those decks just do have a workaround because if you're not able to stabilize your own game state, they definitely have opportunities where they're able to loop back their extra deck resources that are banished. With the field spell for Yummy and then the traps for Dragontail. So I think they're able to still hold off and stabilize themselves and actually get back in the game, especially if you're dropping just Cherries on your turn 0, your opponent's turn 1 against Dragontail. Like you're still setting up the traps, you're bouncing back, you're putting back the fusions with the traps, and then you're still able to access Arthalion with 5 mana on the opponent's turn. So it actually really doesn't do anything, and I think the same case goes for Yummy. So it's good in theory, but it's just never in practice.
Yeah,
I think one thing a lot of people forget about with this card too is that to activate it, your opponent has to have more monsters than you do. So you can't use this as a going first card. And also against the Dracotail matchup, if their first action is like start Rahu, you can't just like Cherries right there and call that Therion.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so brief history of the card. The last time I remember it being playable was 2018, I believe, like Logan said. So it was played in Spiral format. It originally came out in Burning Abyss format, but back when Beatrice was first released. So very good back in that format, very condensed, good in mirror matches. Spiral Helix was just like the biggest choke point in the deck at that point. What was the deck that you said that you played it in originally? Like the last time it was playable?
The last time that I played I topped a YCS with this card on my side, and I had my targets were Electromite and the Gem Knight fusion that they summoned off Brilliant Fusion, Seraph Knight.
Or the anti-FTK card?
So yeah, it was literally the anti-FTK, anti-Grass Looks Greener card.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah. So it's impressive to me that, like, over the course of time, like, the past few years when we've looked at this card, so something like, I think Detonator was, like, a time when people tried to play Reaper. And then, like, when you look at the Yummy deck, you would assume cutting off Snatchy would just, like, kind of end their game. And it's maybe, like, kind of a skill check, like you said with Contaxy, like, if people aren't playing the Cross Sheep or the Almirage or the Anima because for whatever reason they wanted other cards, then maybe the card just has, like, overperforms. Even if you do Reaper them, like, it will take them a turn or two to, like, get the Snatchies back in rotation through the field spells. So I think the card has potential. The Arthalion thing, I'm less convinced on because, like Logan touched on, you don't always have to have a monster on the field for your first action. So I think it is very niche. I think it may be, like, a hair better than something like Metaltronus because summoning an Ojama Knight and then negating a guy doesn't do too much because theoretically if they have access back into play through surprise, they can just, like, synchro that guy off, bring it back with Martial Metal March, or, like, still do things with the body. So I think there's maybe a deck or two that could justify it. Like, the Vanquishful deck doesn't really need its extra deck to the most extent. So there's probably some arguments for it, but I'm not sure if it's a card that I'm super convinced of over something like you said, like Super Poly or Slayer. If you're already committing the extra deck slots to it, these cards are a little bit more versatile. I think are a little bit more impactful, especially against other matchups. This the Yummy matchup I haven't tested it with. I may take a look into it, but I think it's not something that I'm super convinced on initially, just based on its track record over the past 5 years of, like, us being like, hey, this card may be playable, and we're like, oh, it's kind of playable, like, and then it just, like, isn't. Like, the Maliss deck, we were like, oh, you can hit Red Ransom or White Binder, and then they just put it back, and then, like, you kept playing normally. Like, you, like, look at these decks, and you would think it's, like, a big choke point, but a lot of decks are just, like, so diverse in terms of, like, how they generate their interrupts and also their follow-up, that there isn't really just one choke point that just, like, ends the game. Like, back in Spiral format, you remove double Helix, and, like, it was a really big struggle to get to all the cards you need to, like, Master Plan. So yeah, that is the spiel on Cherries. We'll get into something that Yummy plays. We saw it actually earlier in the list from the Fiendsmith deck. There was he was playing Harpie's Featherstorm in Yummy. So have y'all tried this? Like, do you feel like Yummy needs the additional going first power? I obviously hope this card gets banned along with Paradise Smasher, just another card that just passes turn. So it obviously is viable. Like, Rizio played it for a long time, but what are your current thoughts on it? Rehan?
This card sucks. Um, I tried to play it for nuts, and every time I tried to, like, just try to beat it to, like, bypass, like, or turn skip my opponent that turn skip me withdrawal. Every time I was like, this could be something else. Um, and right now, like, Yummy doesn't have a great, like, floodgate hand trap against it. I think Fua would be the closest one, but I think it's half board into Fua is just perfectly fine. And if those cards are Solemns instead, I think Solemns insulate the board much better than whatever Harpie's Featherstorm could do, because you're able to actually counter the breakers that beat you. So I think I don't see a reason to play it in Yummy, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I'm kind of the opinion that this is like one of the fakest side deck cards we've had in Yu-Gi-Oh in a very long time. I think last format obviously Charlie did well with it in his side. I tried playing it over and over again. You have to be playing to be able to use it. Generally, you have to actually make your board worse. Sometimes, like last format, you had to play into nib with it. In the current format, it's a little bit different. You do actually have to make your board worse. You have to turn 2 yummies into a rank 1, or you have to turn them into, I believe, a Mistbird Colossalus is also a target that they can play. It's a level 3 synchro with the right typing. But this is just a card that you have to be playing. Your opponent has to not hand trap you generally. And it doesn't even always win you the game because sometimes your opponent just has like plays on your turn. Plays right now, everybody can play on their opponent's turn. So, you pass back to Dracotail and they have like 5 mana and pan and stuff in their hand. And they pass back to you. They have Holly Seal, all that stuff. I don't think it's fantastic. The closest I've seen to this card being playable is maybe as a thrust target, as a one-of thrust target. But aside from that, I'm not generally a big fan of this card. It could be any generic card. Like, if you back your board with the Solemn Strike or Judgment, you probably win anyways.
I think those are good points. I assume is the Ripplebird a legal target for this? I believe so, right?
I think so. I don't
If that's
even.
the
Is
case,
Ripplebird
then
a link one or a rank
it's
one?
it's a rank 1. You play it in the Mimighoul version, so maybe there's an argument in that deck because like you just already have that there.
Yeah, Ripplebird is a target.
Okay, so that's nice. So maybe there's an argument for it in the Mimikul variant. I haven't seen their side deck. They may have been putting it in there. But yeah, I think like you acknowledged, like it also just like I think something that not everyone considers is like this card is obviously like a very good card, but does it fix why you're losing? And if like you look at a card like let's say Nibiru and you start Obedience School, like obviously you can't make it there. But if you're playing like a normal board and you end with this rank 1 on your board, which you probably had to make over something like a Herald, then how valuable was this as an inboard piece? Like you drew a card that is now dead compared to if this was like a Solemn when you got nibbed, you still had that kind of backup for it.
Yeah, I think the Obedience School thing is something good to mention too. Is people are playing the rank one in the deck. I do think you are supposed to just play the Synchro 3 because if you Obedience School, then you can make it live on your opponent's turn. Like a very small thing, but it is relevant.
Yeah, for sure.
To mention, I think the Obedience School card is so polarizing. Like it's so broken when it resolves against you. But if I'm playing Yami, it just seems so terrifying to know that a nib can just end me.
Yeah, and then it also guarantees like you pretty much always have to give 2 draws off of it just to like create Snatchy, and then like you kind of want to also get the draw off of, or like you get surprise back obviously, but like is Snatchy plus Guy good into 6 cards? Like it really depends on the other 4 cards in your hand. So I think
I'm
card's
not
obviously very good, but yeah, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I'm not sure how much if you guys have like been playtesting Yummy a lot, but what I've been doing with the deck lately is when I Obedience School, I'm never placing minion, like ever. I'm always placing a Croaky to help me play through Nib. And in a lot of hands too, I'm trying to hold a cookie in my hand so that if I do get nibbed, I can normal summon the cookie, make their nib lose 1,000 attack. And it makes the choke points a lot harder to kill my board. It also gives me the option to go surprise into Snatchy and then just synchro immediately in the battle phase and like book a moon the nib. So you can get essentially squeeze out 2 extra bodies if you place the Akroki instead of the minion, and then if you like hold a normal summon in your hand. So I think there is like some good play around nib that a lot of people maybe aren't utilizing.
Yeah, that I'm about to have a video coming out I think tomorrow or Wednesday where I'm learning the Yummy deck because it's a deck that I've played against a fair bit, but I haven't actually like spent the time to like learn the interactions and play it as well as I should be able to. So yeah, that's something that I'm learning as well. Is like I saw a guy activating a Kuroki over minion turn 0 every time at the regional, and he made mistakes with the interaction points. Like I believe he forgot to use a pop effect on turn 0 when I summoned a Holy Sue. So, but I did recognize I'm like, oh, like this card does shut off like my Rosin, so I can't do that. I either have to take or I have to use a different interaction or I have to pop the Kuroki itself. So I think you're correct that this deck is still pretty new. I'm obviously very new to the deck. So there's a lot of different things that can and hopefully will be innovated on how to beat the cards like Nibiru, which theoretically could be like kind of game breaking, but if you know what you're doing, it's not as impactful as it could be.
Yeah, I should also learn it, but then the issue is I'm playing Dracotail and that deck always dumpsters Yummy, so
Yeah, why don't learn the bad deck? That makes sense. It's your free matchup. So last one for the weekend was a Maliss deck that was playing Iblee in the main deck. Is this something that y'all have tested historically or have any thoughts on the current format?
So I looked at it because I forget what I was looking at. I think I was looking at Ubel for this format for a minute. Before I realized how bad Ubel is in Paracorrupt. But it was really cool because it doesn't actually turn on Izuna until it's already on the opponent's board. And it was also a nice checkpoint for cards like Femena and Holy Sue, because your opponent has to use those cards early before Iblee touches down on their field. So that was it was interesting to force out early interactions and those turn zero hand traps or engine hand traps. And I think in a deck like Yummy, I've seen Iblee be played because you just turn it into an All Mirage and you're able to extend, but then not playing into Nib afterwards, which I thought was also cool. Um, and then even in the case that we do get Fuad, your opponent would have to Fuad preemptively, but now they're stuck with an Iblee and you can just pass with an All Mirage. And so they can't crash it unless they tribute over it. I feel like the tribute aspect is a bit more easy now with K9 in the format, but it was a card that I kind of explored early on, and I thought had value, especially with Bishields also dying down a fair bit.
Yeah, Logan, any thoughts?
How accessible is the Iblee in the deck? I know like backup can search it, but I'm assuming most of the time in Malice you're going to be wanting to search Wizard, so I'm not really sure. Is there like a lot of like set combos with the Iblee?
I currently don't know of any. I assume I saw the list. I don't remember like, how many backup he played, but it was definitely like Iblee and Wizard. So I assume if you draw Wizard, you discard Iblee, search Wizard, and like get it back that way. So like you probably have a little bit more access to it. But yeah, I am currently unaware of how to do it. That's something that we can try and find out.
I'd be curious to see if there's like set one and 1.5 card combos that like access it very easily.
Yeah, I mean that would make it way better. But I will say though, like a card like a Bestial, which may have historically been okay against your deck, is now just like substantially better. Obviously, they're falling out of favor a little bit, but if you get caught by that one Vanquishful deck, like if you commit substantially to that card, then it's gonna be way more impactful than it could have been.
Also, Crow is in the format now as well.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, you're just kind of giving your opponent opportunities to use cards that weren't already good against you. It's obviously impactful, obviously a very good card. But like Rehan also pointed out, like as soon as in the format, we've got all the K9s. So like being able to tribute summon over the monster is not as difficult as it may have been historically. So probably not something that I'm super interested in, but we will see if it shows up in the future. Like Malice is obviously still a contender. Maybe it needs a little bit of extra push, and maybe it's like a post side thing where okay, the crows come out, now the Iblee comes in. Like in the main deck, probably not something I'd be super invested in, but I think post side's probably super viable. So yeah, now that we've gone through a lot of this, we are going to talk about the Vancouver meta. Sorry, we have the progression as well from this spreadsheet. So this was the week 1 Justice Hunters breakdown in terms of decks that we saw. So unknown is 12.5%. Yummy, we've got 21 total decks. I don't think he posted exactly how many regionals were, so I can do better in the future about knowing exactly how many lists there are total. So 21 Yummy, 29.2%, 20 Vanquishful at 27.8%, and then third place is Dragontail at 5.6%, Maliss at 5.6%, and then Mitsurugi at 5.6%, and then from there Memento, Sky Striker, and a bunch of other one-ofs. And for week 2, we see a pretty big adjustment, so a lot more regionals this weekend, so we're going to have more information. But still about half the decks are still unknown. But we see Vanquish Soul at 15% of current decks. Yummy is still in second place at 12% with 20. And then Dragontail is upping its percentage a little bit. It's up to 10.7 with 18 total decks. So just 2 less Dragontail than Yummy. Obviously, we don't know half of the deck, so this number could be skewed a little bit one way or the other. But it's interesting to observe Dracotail's improvement over the past week. And then from there, we've got Crystron, Maliss, Rizio, and Orcust over the last few percentages, all sub 5%, and then a bunch of one-of decks that we've kind of mentioned earlier. So what do y'all feel about the week 1 versus week 2? We've seen more Dracotail being introduced into the meta after people like myself and Logan and Julian and Lucas Sacco have all been discussing the deck and trying to figure out the best way to play it. So what are your thoughts on where it is currently, and how do you think week 3 will look after Vancouver?
I'm just happy people are finally realizing what the best deck in Justice Hunters was. It was always Dragon.
Whatever the fusion deck is.
It's always whatever the fusion deck is. But I think it definitely we have 2 of the culprits here, Logan and Aaron, which are probably susceptible to like why this increase is happening. But I think it's also just like a natural progression. I think if people are playing Yummy more and more, and then I think Dragontail will probably just have more success. And I can swing the entire other way as well, right? If people play Vanquish Soul more, then I think Dragontail numbers can just go back to what they were in week 1, because the charts that we see over here is just the week's topping list. So it doesn't accurately, I guess, tell us what the representation was in the field for every regional in terms of how many people signed up to play Dragontail, Yummy, and Vanquish and so on and so forth. But I think it's really encouraging, at least for me, to see the Dragontail percentage and numbers increase. And I think, like we were talking before this call, I think Logan mentioned that if you look at a platform like DB rated, like Dragontail is popping off there, right? All across high rated DB, a lot of people are playing Dragontail. And I think part of it is just because Yummy, how dominant Yummy has been in the early bit of this format, and how dominant people are, or not dominant perhaps, like how prevalent people are expecting Yummy to be for Vancouver, coupled with like a good matchup into like Maliss as well. And a lot of good theory that's going into Dragontail now. I think Dragontail is seeing success for that. Something that we talked about on our podcast with the disciples is that Dragontails was probably like the most undersolved or like the least solved of the three decks. Because I think there's just so many different variants of Dragontail that have been touched upon, but I don't think there's been like a TCG list that has been solved for the TCG format. So I think as we sort of progress to that, we see more King of the Swamp, right? We saw that in Logan's topping list. We saw that in Julian's topping list. We're seeing more Shaddolls pop up now. So I think we're progressing to a state where we might be seeing a solved Dragontail list that is approaching YCS Vancouver. But I think a lot of it is still just associated with the popularity of Yummy in the format.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the most shocking thing here is the low number of Rizal and Maliss. I think right now people just kind of have this like gentleman's agreement that they're just all playing the new decks. I think if we look at this in like 2 weeks, those Rizal and Maliss numbers are going to double or even triple, and I think the Dracotail deck will probably lose 3 or 4%, but I think it still will be like a meta call deck if you think there's going to be a lot of Yummy in the room.
Yeah, I'm scrolling real quick to see, like, oh, if Raizo and Mitsurugi was at the regional, like, did it win? And it's still just kind of, like, sporadic. There's nothing that's kind of
I think people just aren't playing those decks right now.
Yeah.
No, yeah, so, like, we're gonna, after this, we're gonna go into, what decks we think we would, or what decks we would take to the event, and honestly, we can just do it right now. Real quick, did you have anything about the Duelingbook Meta? I think you had mentioned having looked over a little bit.
Yeah, I just looking. I've just been like playing DB rated and watching a lot of DB rated, and the top decks right now, the top players mostly are on Dracotail. And there is like I think one or even two Yummy Pearly, which I don't know enough about that deck. The only synergy I see there is that the Yummy cards are level ones, and they are like in theory extenders. But the DB meta is very it almost copies whatever is going around on YouTube, whatever the popular deck is on YouTube, whoever, the big YouTubers are talking about, whatever deck they're talking about, that's what the DB meta kind of shifts to. So right now it's Dracotail. We'll see what it is after the YCS.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we kind of perceive Dracotail on the rise. Yummy, I think, is probably, like I said initially, like the most prominent from the new decks. The Vanquishal deck, obviously, very high power level. But whenever I've watched content, like a lot of it's been centered on the Yummy deck. It's the Vanquishal deck, I think, is a little bit less like intro player friendly. It's like a pretty complex deck in terms of just like knowing to align attributes and knowing when to do everything. So yeah, the Yummy deck I think was the most prominent early on. And then I think a lot of like we'll say like the more veteran players are pretty comfortable just like hopping on the Vanquishal K9 and hoping to perform well with it. So of the meta, like me and Rehan did a video where we discussed like the top 6 decks. Logan, of like those top 6, give me like a rough ranking you think of where you think those 6 would go. So Crystron K9, Vanquishal, Maliss, Mitsurugi Raizio, Yummy, and then Dracotail. Of those 6, where do you think the representation looks? And then if you have any idea of like a sleeper deck that you either expect to top or like could overtake any of those decks, what do you think that would be?
So for Vancouver specifically, I think the highest represented deck in Top Cut will be Yummy. However, I don't think it's as likely to win the event. I think the deck that's going to win the event is probably either K9 Vanquish or Mitsurugi Rizal. I think those decks have a higher ceiling, and they just play better going second with Engine. And I think all it really takes for those decks to win the event is just a little bit of luck. Um, the difference between like a K9 Vanquish deck that's getting a little bit lucky and a Yummy deck that's getting a little bit lucky is like very significant. Like the K9 Vanquish deck is unreal when it gets like good variants. In terms of a sleeper deck, I think the sleeper deck I would pick right now is pure Mitsu or Mitsu Fiendsmith, because that deck has the ability to play Super Poly. It also has the ability to play Dominus Impulse, if you're not playing the Fiendsmith cards, of course. Um, and I think that deck just like plays fairly well into most of the meta. I think it has a very good Dracotail matchup. I think it has a good Yummy matchup. I think the Vanquish matchup is like not great, but not bad. And that deck has also always just had a good Malice matchup. So I think that is definitely a sleeper deck that I do see topping.
Rohan, what are your thoughts?
Feel like my thoughts are obvious.
We know Dragontail's winning the event, and you're not going to be there to do it. So unfortunately, someone else will be taking that title. But what else do you got?
I actually think Yummy will be really popular at the event for some unknown reason. But I don't think it'll take up a lot of top cut. I think in a lot of top cut we'll see VSK9, Maliss, Mtr, and potentially even Dracotail. But I think winning the event, I do see Mtr probably winning it. I feel like right now people just like not respecting the deck. And so we talked about this before, but like your game ones have become infinitely easier with people just not maining Droll anymore. So I think there's that. My issue with VS K9 is just the inconsistencies of that deck. And like Logan said, like when you get lucky with that deck, you definitely do get lucky, but you definitely do need to get lucky. Because
Just a
you can
couple
also
times.
get
Not that often.
you can also get unlucky. Like you can get lucky, and that luck is insane. But when you get unlucky with that deck is unplayable. So I think that may also ward off a lot of people from taking a deck like that is sort of susceptible to like implosion. Um, if I were going to YCS Vancouver, honestly, I think I'd consider the Crystron K9 deck. I think that deck has really stood out to me in terms of how unique it is and what it can do. And it also has like ample space for non-engine, and it actually does have a near like unbreakable board, depending on what you're playing into for board breakers. But that deck has really impressed me in testing, and it's good into VSK9. I've definitely started to see progress into the VSK9 matchup ever since I stopped playing Dracotail into that matchup.
Shocker.
I know.
Yeah, so for me personally, I think I would just play Mitsurugi Raizo, which is really boring, but as people pointed out in the podcast before, where I pointed out, I just said Ext and Murakumo a lot, like, that deck gets to play both of those, and I've looked at a fair amount of lists over the weekend, and I haven't seen Drone Lockboard in the main deck of any of them. So I'm like, okay, there's still some Perulias in the Dracotails, but like, explain to me what a Dracotail deck is gonna do to like the Raizo. Like, I just don't see a viable way for a lot of these decks to consistently beat Raizo Mitsu. I think the Mitsurugi, just like the pure deck with Impulse, is a good shout. Like when that's one of the main reasons why I like the pre-prep variant of Mitsu Raizo is because when you summon a Futsu, like you get infinite value. All of these new decks can't really, even if you clear it, which is not easy to do for a lot of the decks, you can't kill afterwards, and you are falling on bounce, or like you have to SP banish a Futsu, and now like in both situations I have 5, 6, 7 cards in my hand, and what now? And like we've seen, like we saw DD Crow in some of the Vanquish Soul lists. We've seen some Bestials, but it's definitely like not enough to where I'm like super concerned with those cards being in the format. So I think that deck is just positioned rather well. There's less Malice as well, so like you're not gonna get impulses often. You trade pretty well into the 1-for-1 hand traps, assuming Saji resolves. So like if you get to Murakumo quickly, you're just gonna take advantage of all the decks that play like Valors and Bells and Purges and whatever. Um, yeah, I think that is probably like the deck that I would take personally. Second place, probably Vanquish K9, just because I've been playing it the most. I think I play it the best. But like they both pointed out, like my losses at this regional this past weekend, one was just Paradise Smasher into Brick, and then there was another yummy matchup where I got continuous shot carded. I just got Gozen for my life. So I think there's definitely some issues with the deck. I don't think it's a perfect pick, but I like Logan's point out of, hey, these are just like the decks that when they get lucky are good, and you the reason why they can get lucky and win is because they play cards like Holy Sue, which is just like a really good engine going second card. Obviously Azuna is a good card, but every deck can play that. But like you just have so many different options within engine to get lucky and perform well with over the course of a long tournament, where it's pretty unlikely for you to get like flooded out. You may brick out, but like you're always gonna have a layer of agency in a lot of your games.
Can I give another shout to my Crystron K9 pick?
Sure, dog.
Um, So one of the cards that we kind of just glossed over previously was Chaotic Elements. So if we do still believe that Mimighoul is a deck to respect and is going to be up there, if I'm playing Crystron K9, I get to play Chaotic Elements.
All right, the Crystron may have a slightly above average Mimighoul deck. All right, explain how you beat a Baguska now.
We didn't get that far.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, there's the rank 4 tool. The rank 4 toolbox is substantially better than the rank 5 toolbox, in case you've forgotten.
Dude, I learned the other day that Chaotic Elements has another bonus effect when you have like three pyros or aquas in your grave. So you can like Perulia counts towards that too, right? You get to pop a card.
Yeah, just it is a very good card. It is just like I'm not a big fan of all the K9 decks currently, so it's not something that I unfortunately get to take advantage of.
Yeah.
Right,
Another problem with the Crystron deck is it is mostly a 2-card combo deck.
Mm-hmm.
This is like an inherent
like your goal
flaw
is
with
to
the
see,
deck.
like just Jokul plus Solfefner, and if you don't, then the combos are definitely a little more susceptible to potential engine. All right, so Logan, you're going to the event. You don't have to give us your specific take, so give us 2 or 3 options that you think are on your short list.
Yeah, I honestly don't know what I'm playing. I will say I'm between two decks. I'm between Yummy and K9 Vanquish. I think Mitsu is maybe the smartest pick, Mimighoul. But I'm just scarred by that deck. I don't have fun playing that deck. I don't enjoy playing that deck. So for me, if I play a deck that's 1 or 2% worse, but I have a better time playing it, and I think I just do like I perform better when I'm playing a deck that I like. So I would rather pick one of the other two. I'm gonna try to decide by tonight or tomorrow between K9 Vanquish or Yummy.
Yeah, I think it's a good shout that like whenever you have to go through the process of testing and optimizing and whatever, if you enjoy that whole process, but because the deck is enjoyable to you, then I think that is good. Like I think any of these 6, even like the additional like Mitsu deck that you mentioned, all of them are viable. So whenever you're like finalizing that, like pick the one that you are the most like you have the highest affinity towards in terms of gameplay, aesthetics, whatever you feel is good. Like if you're gonna go further down that list, that's when you can kind of get in the conversation of okay, is it worth to make even higher sacrifices for a lower power level or lower consistency or whatever. So yeah, I think it's a really good thing to point out, and that actually brings us into our last topic for the day is with Vancouver coming up and like the start of a new season. We've got hopefully some new people coming into the game and people that are striving for their first top. What advice do you have for new players or people that are trying to get to that next level and get their first top?
Yeah, I'm still trying to get first top.
I guess advice would be just you have to keep playing and you can't get like too down on yourself. This is something that I've struggled with several times. There's been, many events where I put in, literally like a work schedule to play test for, and you get to the event and you don't day 2. And it's just like it feels so devastating, but you kind of just have to like have short-term memory with that stuff and just like the next event is new. And just keep practicing, keep focusing on, what your mistakes are, watch your replays. I like to talk to my friends about the game state and, what would you do here? What, how would you react to this? How would you play this hand? And just trying to get like different views on the game, like an outsider's perspective.
Rehan, how do you go from an invitational winner to a second place at a YCS? Like, how are you gonna get to be that next step?
I feel like that's like, is it even next step? Feels like it's a side shuffle. So I think something that's always resonating with me, and it was something that we were just touching upon before we jumped into this topic, is you need to play a deck that you resonate with. You need to play a deck that you enjoy, that you have fun with. True story. I was going to bring Mitsurugi Orcus to nationals, and I was so good on it. Where I was top 50, top 25 in DB rated, and we were having a great time. And then Aaron showed me this shiny new deck called Onomat Raizio. And he's like, look, I have Protoss in my deck. Look how good this X card is. And on paper, and even while playing the tournament, I recognized how good that deck was. But because I didn't enjoy the Rizal cards and I didn't really enjoy the gameplay that deck was going for, or like the rank 4 spam type of deck, I just didn't have a good time. And I misplayed, and it wasn't a great time preparing for that event when I was trying to play that deck specifically. But when I was playing the Mitsurugi Orcus deck, that deck is by far much more inferior to the card quality of the Rizal cards. but I had a really good time, and it was really poetic because that was the deck that knocked me out of the event, and then seeing the NEWCQ champion win the event by special summoning World Crown and a Galathea, it almost goes to show that he played it to have fun. And that's not saying that you should just take Blue Eyes to YCS Vancouver because you enjoy it. I think there needs to be somewhat of a balance between picking something that is decently competitive within the metagame, but also finding cards and strategies that you enjoy and that resonate with you. Because when you do crash out and you do, drop, like you only make day two, if you enjoy the deck that you're playing and you had a good time, that'll soften the blow and make it easier for you to get your head back in the game and then try to prepare for the next event. And I think that's like the biggest part is how do you recover from one event to another? Because if you're unable to do that and you're still thinking about past failures, it can be really difficult for you to get back in the game, get back in the groove, practice, and then push towards the next event. Because a lot of these failures add up. And then whenever we see people win a YCS, get their top, make it to Worlds, we see a lot of the successes, but a lot of it is just grounded in failures. So even before, like, I never intended to enter this YCS playing Ubel because I was one of 3 Ubel or 2 Ubels that made top cut. And Ubel was awful for that event. But I really enjoyed the deck. And I didn't know how to combo with it, but I really enjoyed the deck. And I somehow got got a second place to finish at the YCS. So all that to say is just that you need to also enjoy the journey.
I think those are
Yeah.
fantastic points. The one critique I will give of you specifically is you swapped Wednesday before the event. So
That doesn't fit the agenda.
yeah, so like you can't be the most harsh on that. Like obviously if you had picked the deck you played longer, that probably would have been a better decision, especially, WCQ and all. The biggest event of the year for us. So
Yeah, one last thing I do want to say is this is something I've noticed talking to some players who have like had constant success in the game. I'm kind of the type of player who, 3 or 4 months go by, I don't do anything, then I'll top an event, 3 or 4 months, then I'll top an event. I just haven't had that like back to back to back consistency. And the players that I've talked to who have had that consistency, they're just taking that momentum and going like when they win an event or do well at an event, they're taking that momentum and going to every single event until they aren't doing well. And I don't know if that's just a mental thing or, if your opponents are fearful of you or what it is, but it seems like the people who like, for example, Julian's a great example. He once he did well at one event and he just kept going to events, it was like he couldn't lose. And I don't know what the theory is behind that, or something in the universe or what, but it seems like you just have to keep playing when you're doing well and just keep going.
I think a lot of it is mental based, right? Because I think when you go on an empty streak or a dry run for a couple of events, I think it really becomes much more difficult to go to the next event because you want to break that duck.
Yeah.
And so that is something that even if you actively try to push the back of your mind, it's going to be there. So it definitely is something because like when I won the remote invitational, so that was my first like because I entered like really competitive in Yu-Gi-Oh during the COVID era, so I could only enter remote events. And so I took part in the remote invitational, and I did really well in the remote circuits. And after I won the remote invitational, I was on a really big high. I started a Twitch channel. I started like trying to like get some hype going. Um, but I topped the next 2 remote YCSs that I played, and then the first nationals that I played, so 2022, the championship one. Right after we were back from, I guess, COVID, I topped that event as well, and that was like my second in-person event ever. So I think there's definitely merit behind like riding the coattails of success, and I think a lot of it has to do with the mental game.
Yeah. So some of it I think is also like if you just got off of topping an event, the next event there is just like less pressure on you, it feels like.
yeah. I think those are all good points. The two things that I will just, I guess, add to it is like enjoy the journey, like Rehan said. If when I was younger, I was just like always playing, and like I still love the game, obviously. But there's been ebbs and flows where I enjoy the game less, and I've had a lot of friends who I got into the game with who are no longer in the game. And when I was younger, I was always pushing them. I was like, hey, like keep playing, whatever, whatever. But as I've gotten older, a little wiser, hopefully, I've just been like, if you're not enjoying the hobby that you do for fun, then please just don't do it. Like,
Yeah, take a break.
yeah, I'll take a break, retire, whatever you want to do. like all the doom and gloom on Twitter. Like there's legitimate critiques of Konami and the game and the format. Like you can always do that. But if that is all you are able to do is just critique and not actually enjoy playing the game, testing, hanging with your friends, whatever, then what is the point of it? And then second of all, like in addition to that, just like find friends and travel with friends and like just prioritize like that aspect of the game as well. Like I'm about to be in 3 different weddings from Yu-Gi-Oh! If I get married, all of my groomsmen will be Yu-Gi-Oh players because this game has been like foundational to my adulthood in terms of my network. Like all of my best friends I met through Yu-Gi-Oh. I'm truly blessed in that regard. And yeah, that's it. Like if like Rehan and now Logan, who I consider a friend, like I've enjoyed these conversations. It is what I look forward to doing every day. It's just like talking with these guys about this silly little card game that I don't know why it kidnapped me at 2015 and I'm still here, but I'm not gonna complain. I've enjoyed the ride and I've obviously taken breaks of months off. I thought I was quitting in April and now I'm creating content. So
if you're ever thinking about quitting Yu-Gi-Oh or retiring from Yu-Gi-Oh, play one more event because it seems like anytime somebody says they're ready to retire, they play that next event and they win that event, or they go deep in that event and then they can't get away from the game.
Aditya has said he was quitting after nationals twice and then made the finals
Twice.
back to back. Yeah, so sometimes you're just lucky as hell and you do it. But obviously he puts in the work and you are like Rehan made a very good point. Like you see these people that have success, but what they don't see is the X amount of hours of work behind. And obviously people have jobs and lives and whatever. Like you can't always commit as much time as some people that are younger and have more resources or whatever. But just whenever you do have that time, is if it is something you enjoy doing, then look at content online, like focus on improving, like have a testing group that you enjoy spending time with, like as friends, and then also in Yu-Gi-Oh! Like the testing server that I created for Nationals format was not the best players that I know. Like obviously a lot of them are very good and I respect them immensely, but they are just my friends. And when I was younger, I strive to just like talk to pro players and good people, and I have that network now. Like I call a lot of people my friends, and I mean it, but they're not the people that I have like I can consistently talk to, and I just want to hang out with my friends and talk Yu-Gi-Oh, and that's all my Secret 7 is, and it's one of the things that has reinvigorated me to keep playing this game. Is I'm like I get to talk Yu-Gi-Oh with my best friends and just play the game for fun, and yeah, I can't ask for anything else.
You dropped a bombshell. Now there's going to be like a civil war trying to find out who the bad players in the testing server are. Who's just there because there's Aaron's friends.
Yeah, if you can't figure that out, then that's unfortunately probably you. Alrighty, so it was a pleasure doing this with you guys. I'm looking forward to doing it in the future. We'll figure out the schedule moving forward, probably once a week, maybe once every other week. I think me and Rehan are going to be pretty static in terms of it. Logan said his availability is a few times a month, so we'll see if he's going to be regular. I enjoy this conversation a lot, and it'll be up hopefully sometime the next day or two. Any final words, boys?
Just thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. You are welcome anytime, Rehan. It's a pleasure as always, my friend. And yeah, thank you for hanging out, and we'll talk in the next one.